Uh, my name is Craig Jarvis. I'm the lead pastor here. It's good to see you this morning. Welcome, welcome. Um, this is an interesting time for us in our world today. That just seems so many different things. I don't know about you, but grab our attention, grab my attention from moment to moment. And sometimes it's hard to keep my mind focused on who's really in charge. So this is a Sunday that we get to celebrate that, not just with hearing the message, but also in the way that we sing. And we confess how that's true in our own lives from our own mouths. And I really value our times on Sunday because it kind of centers us back where we need to be. And that last song, I'm falling in love with all over again because of the name of our church, Anchor Point Church. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And that song just does a wonderful job of emphasizing why we're calling ourselves Anchor Point Church and how we are connecting our truth, which is not our truth at all, but it is God's truth, and we mold to it. I'm always scared to say our truth because it sounds like we're going down, this is my truth and that's your truth, and 2 + 2 = 12, and that doesn't work that way. There is truth and there is not truth, and God always tells us the truth, right? And I love that about him. So today we're going to be finishing our last Sunday on Anchor Points, why we've called our church this name, and you can rehearse if you missed the last couple of Sundays and find out some of those messages and catch up with us. But today is this is the message that I wrote first. And so I'm excited to be able to share it with you and discover some things in here today. I actually have a confession to make. Even though I wrote this one first, I completely changed it this week because the Lord really laid something on my heart, and I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done before. I'm going to lay a truth of God over on a moment of Jesus Christ that he had with his disciples, and hopefully the connection will be made nicely. If it isn't, it's completely my fault, all right? I want to tell you a story about something that happened in the town that I grew up in. Halifax, Nova Scotia is in Canada. It's as far east as you can go without falling into the ocean. And it's a beautiful town, but in 1917, something very interesting happened in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And what happened would change the city and actually history forever. You may not be aware of this, but this actually was a historic worldwide event. How many of you have heard about the Halifax explosion? Oh, some of you have heard about it. So the Halifax explosion occurred on December 6, 1917. 2 ships were in the harbor. Halifax has the largest ice-free harbor in the world. And in order to get into the harbor, natural harbor in the world, and in order to get into the harbor, there's this place you have to go through called the Narrows. And it's just what it sounds like. It's like, what should we call this? Well, it's really narrow. Let's call it Narrows. All right, so they called it the Narrows. And all the ships have to go through this really narrow part before they get into the larger harbor. 2 ships on December 6, 1917 were traveling, one in and one out. One was from France. It was the SS Mont Blanc, and it was carrying wartime explosives from New York through Halifax to Bordeaux, France, for the World War I effort. On its cargo, it was carrying 5 million pounds, that's 2.5 tons of explosives, including TNT, pictric acid, gun cotton, and benzol. Another ship that was going through the Narrows at that time, early in the morning when the fog was heavy, was the SS Imo. This was a Norwegian ship headed to New York to pick out relief supplies for civilians who had been hurt and what do you call it when you lose your house and stuff? Yeah, disenfranchised by World War I. This ship from this Norwegian ship from Norway, this one was empty. The other one was full. Fog rolled in overnight. It was very thick, and the weather made it very difficult to maneuver within the harbor. Ships had to go very carefully through the harbor. But a series of communication failures, the language barrier, navigational unawareness of the harbor, these 2 vessels collided. I've got a picture of it here. There's a picture because a fire broke out. The explosion didn't occur originally, but a fire broke out, and eventually the explosion did occur. That's the SS Mont Blanc right there. Listen, it was the largest man-made explosion in history before the atomic bomb. And the ships were traveling 1 knot. Do you know how fast 1 knot is? 1 mile an hour. 1 mile an hour. When I was growing up in Halifax, we would go to a park, and I never appreciated that, but in the middle of the park there was an anchor. Actually, it was a part of an anchor. And underneath of it, there was a inscription, and I have a picture of that up there as well. I'll try and read the inscription for you if I can read it. The December 6, 1917 Halifax explosion hurled this 1,140-pound anchor shaft 2.35 miles from the SS Mont Blanc to this place in the park. And they left it right there. The anchor shaft weighed over half a ton, and it flew almost 2.5 miles. Now, 2.5 miles is a long way for an anchor shaft that is over a ton to fly. So that shows you the extent of the explosion. The explosion itself leveled Halifax. The city that I was in 1917 was no more. And the surrounding area, there's a little town that takes you an hour to get to. It's called Truro, and windows broke in Truro. The snowstorm that came that night actually ended up killing more people than the leftover people than the explosion did because of the exposure. The people, there was nowhere for them to run, and there was a terrible snowstorm that night. It was a terrible chapter in Haligonian history. That's Halifax history. And what amazes me is the force of the explosion. There are pieces of these ships actually in different parks that you can go to, and you can see how devastating this explosion was. I started thinking about this illustration because we are going to be calling our church Anchor Point Church, and there's reasons for that. Why did we choose it? I have been impacted so much, I don't know about you, by the truth of this, that everybody wants stability in life. Think of how you fight for stability. How many different areas do you struggle just to find stability? Some of you are struggling with your health right now. And every time I talk to you, you go, I just wish this would go away. I just want to be back to normal. What you're saying is, I need some stability in my life, and this is knocking me off. Financial stability. Oof, people would do crazy things in order to find financial stability. Some people would leave everything they love behind for the sake of just having enough money. Relationship stability. What would you do in order to just have all of your relationships normal? Like none of us do, right? Everybody in here has relationships that we just wish would be stable, but they're not. They haven't been, or they're going through a point of time right now where we're thinking, this may not ever work out. We fight, how about future? Future stability. Retirement's right around the corner, and I hope I have enough, yeah. We fight for all these areas of stability in our lives, and we do all of these things. I need stability in my job. I need stability in my health. I need stability in my relationships. I need stability in my finances, and we would do whatever we can in order to fight for that stability. And what Anchor Point is meant to remind us of is this: you are in an unstable world. We all live in the same world. It should be no question to us. It should be no confusion to us. Bring us no confusion that we live in an unstable world, and therefore our lives will suffer instability as well. So the gospel points us to a truth that we can hang on to. In an unstable world, this is the truth, and this is where we got the name from, which I love, Hebrews 6, 18 to 20. You actually read these words this morning already. Let me just back up a little bit and give you the context, so that by two unchangeable things, the writer of Hebrews says, in which it is impossible for God to lie, and that is, but we already talked about this in our messages, a promise that God made and an oath that he would keep it. We who have fled for refuge. Don't you feel like you do that in your relationships, in your finances, your stability? We who have fled for refuge might have, listen church, might have what? Strong encouragement. Listen, this is what we need church to be, right? You need to go somewhere, for goodness sakes, in your life from week to week where you get strong encouragement. You can find that in Jesus, and hopefully you can be reminded of it every Sunday. We who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf. Our hope goes beyond this world. Our hope is an anchor that rests in heaven itself. That's why, even though the world is unstable and our lives are unstable because we're in the world, we can have a hope that endures, an encouragement that actually works. Instead of hoping in all of these anchor points, we talked about last week, instead of hoping in all of these anchor points that everybody is investing their lives into to give their lives meaning and hope and encouragement, we have one that goes beyond this world. It goes behind the veil. It goes into the very presence of the God who loves us. So what I want to do this morning, I told you I was going to do something different, is I'm going to take a message from the book of James, which I love, and it talks about anchors and boats and all kinds of waves and stuff, and I'm going to lay it over top of a very familiar story that you already know about, involving waves and storms. And let me just introduce it this way. It talks about drifting in fear can often occur during the storms and the fog of life. And you may be in the middle of something where it is bringing you fear, it is bringing you confusion because you feel like you're in an unstable world and you're experiencing instability right now. But I want to tell you, stability is not built during the calm seasons. Stability is built in the storms. It's established before, but it is strengthened in the storms. So let me take you to point number one. Here it is. Storms are not merely inconvenient, they can potentially upset an entire life. That is the most childish point I have ever put on the screen. Because it is so basic, you're probably sitting there going, seriously, Craig, this is what you came up with? Because every one of us knows this is absolutely true. A storm that you go through is not merely inconvenient, it can potentially upset an entire life. So I take you to the book of James. If you're using your social media, your Bibles on your apps, or if you got your Bible with you, this is great. James 1:2 says this. Count it all, this you're going to hate. I really dislike this verse. Out of all the verses of the Bible, this one I may dislike the most because of that three-letter word. Count it all, what? Okay, you want to know why you should be joyful? You ready for this? Count it all joy when you go to a party with your friends and you have a great time and you're celebrating the new job and the income and the salary boost, right? No. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you what? When you meet trials of various kinds. I can almost guarantee you, now you hate this verse as well, right? Apparently, according to this verse, we should be thrilled to go through trials. How many of you are thrilled to go through trials? Come on, this one you confess up, all right? I can't see any hands out there at all. Nobody's thrilled to go through trials. Nobody likes trials. You never go to bed and go, boy, I hope tomorrow goes like completely south. You never go to a job and go, oh man, I'm starting a brand new job. I hope it just tanks all today. Nobody ever does that, right? Nobody ever goes into a relationship going, oh, I love this other person. I hope they really hurt me tomorrow. Nobody ever does that. Yet this verse says, count it all, three-letter word, joy. When you encounter trials of, this is where the Bible really, people who don't read the Bible don't understand this, but the Bible is very applicable because it makes it very vague, and it does it on purpose. Trials of various kinds. Why? Because every one of us has different trials. And tomorrow you'll have different trials, and the next day you'll have different trials. This word trials is perismos. Perismos, which means nothing to you except that what it means is, perismos, this is in the Greek, it means to press something down hard. Now, when I press something down hard, I think of the silly putty, that's right. And all the kids in here and everybody under 30 is going, what in the world is silly putty? Well, it came in an egg, and I don't know why, but it came in a plastic egg, and you pulled it out, and you know what you could do with silly putty? You could read the funnies, and then you could press this down, and then you could read the funnies again on this little piece of Play-Doh. Cool. Yeah. But I loved silly putty. It was an amazing thing. And the harder you press down, the more the picture came off, right? The clearer the picture came off. I got to think there's some chemical in there that was not healthy for us at this point. And when you eat it, like I did, it probably was even worse. This is like when you press down really hard, you get the picture comes off clear. Jesus says we are pressed down on every side in this life. Jesus is not surprised about this. And the harder you get pressed, the goal is not to get through the pressing. The pressing stinks, but you live in an unstable world. So you are going to be unstable in some ways. I keep telling Beth, it's normal. I'm unstable. I live in an unstable world. The goal may not be to get out of the press. The goal might be to see the picture that is revealed underneath. Our goal is to be a better picture of Jesus when we go through trials. That's the point. If our world needs to see anything, it's calm through pressure. It's peace through the wars. And the more we get pressed down, church, the more we're supposed to become a better image of Jesus Christ. Look at this guy. Thank you, Mark. What a good fellow. We should give him a hand. Look at that. Thank you, sir. All right. Not only that, but I didn't make it up. I told you last week I steal everything, and I try to do a really good job as a thief and get everything from Scripture so I can give it to you in a way that is really understandable. And what James does is extremely practical. You don't have to dig very far. The next verse tells us exactly why we go through trials. Verse 3. It says this, "For you know the testing of your faith produces" what, church? Steadfastness. "And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you might be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." You will be a man. You will be a woman. You will be the best version of you that you can be if you go through trials. Feel the pressure. Steadfastly stay strong through it. Learn what you need through it so that you can be perfect and complete and you lack in nothing. The testing of your faith. So I looked up what steadfastness is. Steadfastness is from a Greek word, and you pronounce it hupomene, which means nothing to anybody except that if you look it up in the Greek, the example you will have is this. This hupomene means you have the ability to stand up under a load. You have the ability to stand when the load is put on top of you. This is not gritting your teeth. That's a completely different word. This is not, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. This is not that at all. This is not pretending it doesn't hurt. This is not that at all. This is the idea of remaining faithful as pressure mounts. Not gritting your teeth to get through it, but remaining faithful as the pressure continues. It's like the idea of a bridge in a river that has these pylons. And I've seen some pictures of this, and you have too, where the river is just flowing downstream, and these pieces of wood and trees and debris are hitting these pylons, and they stay firm. This is not gritting your teeth. This is the ability of having such roots, having such faith, that you have the ability to stand up under pressure, to withstand the onslaught. so that you find completeness in this life. Steadfastness must have its full effect, the Bible says, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So I put it up here so you can easily follow the thread of thought here. Here it is. Storms test faith. Faith refined brings steadfastness. Steadfastness, when fully engaged, will complete your picture as a person, as a follower of Jesus Christ. Storms, therefore, church, the reason we rejoice in them is because they are for our benefit. Don't you wish you could go home now? Storms are for our benefit. That's why we find joy in the storms. We are becoming a better picture of who Jesus Christ is. Storms do not develop faith. They show faith that's already there. So you say you're a Christian. Okay. Do you know the only way to figure out if you really are a Christian? How well you do in the storms. That's it. Doesn't that stink? Don't you wish you could just say you're a Christian and watch TV and have a good dinner and go to bed and just call it a day? Doesn't work that way. Christ develops our faith more through the storms, and our faith grows roots so that we are firm. And when that happens, we become a strong, visible picture of Jesus Christ to the world around us that looks at us and goes, how in the world can you go through this? And you say, because Christ is my strength. Because I am learning to love Jesus more as I go through this. You can't fix it. How many problems in life can you not fix? And it drives you nuts, right? You can't fix it. You go through it, you trust Christ, and you become, as the pressure mounts, a better picture of who he is. So that, church, so that you can rely on him and you fear nothing. This is not temptation. I need to just take a little sidebar here. All right, this is not temptation. James 1:13 says, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. All right? God is out of that picture. Now here's what's amazing. The word for tempt in verse 13, where God has nothing to do with any of this, is the same word as trials in verse 2, where God has everything to do with that. Isn't that crazy? It's the same word, perismos. It's the same parazo. It's the same Greek word. And here's why. Because your test can easily become your temptation. Whatever you're tested in right now might lead you to do really bad things, make bad decisions, become somebody you don't want to be. That's the challenge. The test, same word, same Greek root word, the test that's supposed to make you a better image of Jesus, that test could, if handled poorly, turn into a temptation where you begin to walk down a road you never thought you'd walk down and make decisions you never thought you'd make. The outcome of an endured test should be a stronger faith, but the outcome of an embattled temptation is a damaged faith. You see, God will use it to make a better picture of himself in you, or you can use it to make a worse picture of God through your life. A trial seeks to perfect and develop our faith. A temptation seeks to destroy our faith. Hebrews 4:15 puts it this way. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who is in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. And you might go, wait a minute. We just read a verse in James that said God can't be tempted. Jesus can't be tempted. And I know he went to the wilderness and he was tempted. And this verse says he has been tempted, yet without sin. Why? It's the same word. Same Greek word. But his trials never turned into a temptation. See the difference? And ours often do. When you go through a trial, does the best version or the worst version of you come out? You see, that's the difference. When Jesus went through a trial, it's for the purpose of him being a reflection of his Father. When we go through a temptation, sometimes we take it over here, and we become the worst picture of ourselves. Jesus' storms in life never led him to destroy his faith. It never did. But our tests can turn into tempts, unlike they did for Jesus Christ. So let me just put this up on the screen. The storm is not the sin. The temptation is the invitation to respond sinfully to the storm. If your response when you go through hell on this earth is to let your tongue fly uncontrolled, you have taken a trial and turned it into a temptation. If your response as you go through this life is to be led down roads that create the worst version of yourself when you are stressed. I had this one friend of mine, and she said, Craig, you got to come over. I got to talk to you. So I went over to her house. Her husband was there. They were going through a family situation. And I sat down on the couch, and she's sitting there, and she struggled with sugar. She struggled with sugar. It was her go-to when life went down the tubes. She's sitting there with a big bag of chocolate on her knees. And I came over, and I sat down with her, and I said, what's up? And she told me a litany of terrible things that had just happened in her life. And I was going, could you pass me the chocolate? She said, you see this big bag of chocolate? She said, I've been sitting here all morning with this bag of chocolate on my knee. I want so much to devour this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to trust the Lord. I said, good for you. Good for you. And instead of turning that pressure into a temptation that would make her feel worse about herself, give her a sugar high, and then put her to sleep all afternoon. She knew this could not control her life. She chose, for whatever reason, to sit with a bag of candy on her lap all day, just to prove to herself she can take this and become a better picture of Jesus on the other side. I also like the fact that James says, when you meet trials. It doesn't use the word if. Do you know what that tells me, church? What does that tell you? It's going to happen. Yeah, I told you, it's not hard to figure this stuff out. Jesus also told us, John 16:33, I have said these things to you that in me you might have peace. He's talking to his disciples and to us. So you might have peace. In the world you will have what? Joy. In the world you'll have a blast. In the world you will have what? Jesus tells the truth. In the world you're going to have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. I often wonder, why didn't Jesus just save us and take us? Wouldn't that be cool? Save us and take us. Are you saved? You're going to go to heaven anyway. Let's just do away with the middle process. But the fact is, church, you need to sit here for a while with a big bag of candy on your knee so that you can see if you're going to turn your trials into temptations or if there's going to be a better picture of Jesus on the other side. We're in it to win it. We're in the world to win the world. We're in it to win it. That's why Jesus left us behind, because the world is not going to see Jesus any other way than in you and in me. So trials are not minor inconveniences. They have a purpose. They interrupt plans. They expose weakness. They develop our faith. All of these things. They reveal our anchor point. You like that connection? They reveal where our anchors are. So, let me do something really strange, and I'm going to take you to another passage of Scripture, one of our main passages of Scripture, our second one, about a storm in the Gospels. It's in Matthew 14, verse 22. You're probably familiar with this story because it's very, very popular, and it involves Peter and the disciples in a boat. Here's what it says in verse 22. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go before him to the other side when he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up into a mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat, by this time, was a long way from land. It was beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. They're in a storm. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. Now, you might read this like a child's story and think to yourself, yeah, that sounds very normal. I want you to know that's not very normal. There's a lot of weird things here. Let me point out a few of the things that we can read and we can go, yeah, that is weird. Why did that happen? Storms will come and do the most damage when you're weak and when you're weary. Did you know that? Satan is a crafty little son of a gun. He will not hit you when you're doing well. He'll hit you when you're weak. When life stinks, when everybody's against you, when the job goes south, when finances tank, that's when he will come. And he will hit you and he will be relentless. He is worse than any fighter you've ever seen in the ring. And once you're down, he'll keep pummeling you. You are his enemy, not his plaything. And he is your enemy. And you must be aware of his crafty schemes. And he will hit you when you are tired, when you are weary, and when you are weak. This story of Peter in the boat and the disciples in the boat and Jesus walking on the water, this happens when two people are down. First one is Jesus. Do you know what happened right before this? Jesus had just gotten some devastating news. Do you know what that was? Jesus had just been told that his cousin, his very good friend, a man who he said there was none other in the world like this man. Do you know who that man was? John the Baptist. He has just been told that John the Baptist had his head cut off. And the reason was because this lewd activity went on, and this evil mother, who could have received anything in the kingdom, was so angry with John the Baptist for telling the truth in life that she gave up everything else. And when the king said, your daughter has danced better than any other daughter, she's got it going, I'm going to give you anything you want. She said, tell him you want John the Baptist's head. And he was sad that he made that promise, but he followed through with it. And Jesus had just received this news. Do you want to know why he wanted to go out on the mountain to pray? He hung out with his boys all the time. Why did he want to get rid of them now? Because he needed some alone time. Just like you would and just like I would. He was very low, weak in his physical and in his psychology, in his psyche. As he tries to get alone, he is mobbed by 5,000 people. Have you ever been mobbed by 5,000 people? When you're trying to get alone? All of a sudden you're mobbed. Okay, fine. So he teaches them because he has a shepherd's heart. He teaches them, and then he realizes they're hungry. You remember the story? And so because they're hungry, he says to the disciples, go feed them. And they go, yeah, I can't do it. No. They know he just received news that devastated his heart, and their answer to him was, yeah, it can't be done. He needs better friends, don't you think? You think a friend would say, whatever you need, Jesus, we'll make it happen. We'll try and make it happen. So Jesus says, okay, let's feed him. So he multiplies the fish and the loaves. You know the story. Feeds 5,000. Now he can get alone. So his disciples, he says to them, listen, I just need you to, just give me 5, all right? Just give me 5. Just go away first. Go across the sea. The Sea of Galilee is a big lake. That's what it is. So he says, go across the sea. I'm going to stay here. I'll walk around and I'll meet you. All right? Now, it was a big sea. You can't see one side to the other. I mean, it's a huge sea. The disciples head out. They're caught in a storm. I love the contrast. What is Jesus doing in the storm? He's in it too. He's in a mountain and he is praying at peace. What are the disciples doing? They're in a boat and they're struggling with the oars. They're in the middle of the storm and they think they're going to die. Jesus looked at the Father, the disciples looked at the storm, both at weak points in their lives. Verse 24, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land. It was beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. There's no hope of rescue. These were experienced fishermen, experienced sailors, and they think they're going to die. There's no lifeguard on duty, okay? There's no saving here, and there's no way they're going to get to land. They're trying to get to land, but the wind was against them. I also find this very interesting. If Jesus wants to prove a point that he can walk on water, why not do it like in bright moonlight, where the sea is calm, and his disciples can see them, and they can go, Jesus can walk on water. That is cool. Peter, get out of the boat. In fact, let's all get out of the boat. We'll all walk on water, right? That would have been a cool miracle. No. Jesus decides to walk on the water in the middle of a hurricane. Why? To prove a point. They can't even make, in fact, they think he's a ghost because they can't really see him clearly. He chose to come to them when they were most uncomfortable, when they were most stressed, when they were at their weakest, because storms answer the questions we don't really want to ask. Oh, storms will answer the questions you really don't want to ask. This one being, how deep is my faith? What really controls my emotions? Where do I really run for serious hope? What am I most afraid of losing? You don't discover the potential of your anchor in the calm water. You discover the potential of your anchor when it's a storm. The fourth watch of the night. I got to sink this nail in just one time. The fourth watch of the night is a Roman term. The Roman guards worked on a 4-night schedule. The fourth watch of the night is the last one. The first watch was from 6 to 9 p.m. The second watch was from 9 till midnight. The third watch was from midnight till 3. And the fourth watch was from 3 until 6 a.m. Church, how long were they struggling in the storm? All night. Why didn't Jesus come to them when the storm started? And unless you think I'm making this up, you should know that in another, where is it? I have it in here somewhere. Yes, in Mark 6:48, Jesus clearly sees that they are struggling. In Mark's gospel, he says, Jesus saw they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. Now, you should know one other thing. Not only did he let them struggle, which is kind of mean, don't you think? Like, let's have a show of hands. Who thinks Jesus is mean here? No? He let them struggle for 6 hours at least. That's kind of mean, don't you think? No takers?
If it was anyone else.
I'm taking notes here. I just want to know, like, what's your definition of mean? Because I got a long way to go, apparently. Let them struggle for 6 hours. But in addition to that, you should know, you know what happened in, this is Matthew 13. You know what happened in Matthew chapter 8? Jesus changed the weather. Jesus is sleeping in the boat. The disciples are, woo-doo-doo. Storm comes along. Apparently this happens all the time. Storm comes along. They think they're going to die on this one as well. This is 8 chapters earlier. No, 8. Anyway, whatever the math is. 6 chapters earlier. What's Jesus doing? He's down in the hull of the boat, and what's he doing? Sleeping. He's sleeping in the storm. Why? What's he worried about? Sleeping in. They come down, they go, whoa, wake up, wake up. Don't you care that we're all going to die? And he's looking at them going, what? What do you need now? Now, I just want to sleep. Stop waking me up. Just leave me alone. And they're dripping wet and they're stressed and they're going, wake up. And so Jesus comes up and he goes, peace be still. Storm stops and everything. And they're going, truly, this is the Son of God. That's in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 13, they're in another storm. Why are they worried? Apparently, their best friend can change the weather. Why are they worried? Maybe because he wasn't with them. But they're fretting, and they're worried. They actually said, what kind of man is this that even the wind and the seas obey him? And now they struggle again. I think they were afraid to believe that Jesus might have left them. The darkest part of the night is often before the dawn, and the disciples thought they were alone, but Jesus was with them the entire time, according to Matthew 6:48. He saw them, he let them struggle, and he waited to come to them. He could have calmed the storm. Here's my second point. Trusting Jesus can replace fear in the storms. Every time you go through a storm, you're tempted to fear. I know, I'm there too. Verse 26, so are the disciples. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. And they said, it's a ghost. And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them saying, take heart, it's I, don't be afraid. Why did they think it was a ghost? Because nothing walks on water. Ghosts float on the water, right? That's the stories Or maybe they thought they were going to die. and they were starting to see dead people. I see dead people. Maybe they thought, this is it. Verse 28, Peter answered and said, Lord, this is it. This is the thing. Peter answered him, Lord, if it's you, command, and he's yelling this because the storm's out, command me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come on. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. This is a crazy request. Think about this. Peter, if he loved Jesus, he would have said, get off the water and get in the boat. Right? Wouldn't that make more sense? Not, hey, let me come up. But he saw it. This was a chance for him to be on a roller coaster before roller coasters were ever made. He's thinking to himself, this could be the ride of a lifetime. And he decides to take a chance on it. And for Peter, his faith has been growing for years. So he thinks to himself, this is my chance. Now, this is where it's going to overlap with James. This is my chance to experience some serious joy. Right? Wouldn't you like to walk on water in a storm? I mean, can you imagine how that would be? Peter has grown in his faith. He doesn't invite Jesus into the boat. He gets out of the boat. And he says, let's do this. Let's ride this roller coaster. Let's go through the storm together. Let me clarify for you. James 1 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith without doubting. Church, this is what Peter did. Peter said, if it's you out there, call me out. And Jesus said, come on, bud, come on out. Said, sure, let's take the ride together. What I find in this is God can allow you to find joy in your storm. As weird as that is, God can allow you to find joy in your storm. Remember, God does not promise to remove every storm. Our prayers do not reflect this. When we're in a storm, what do we pray for? Stop the freaking storm, right? Who brought the storm? What are we supposed to find in the storm? Joy in Jesus, a pressure that makes us a little more Jesus. Maybe our prayers are wrong. God doesn't promise to remove every storm. In fact, he promises us one thing. In this world, you're going to have storms. That's his promise. You'll have tribulation. But take heart. I have overcome the world. He doesn't promise to remove every storm, but he does promise to provide what we need in the middle of it. God will give you generously whatever you need in the middle of your storm. But we must ask in faith. Faith is believing that he is in control. Faith is not accusing God of being mean. Do you get it? When you ask in faith, you believe that he's in control. Listen, the issue is not whether we have questions. The issue is whether we trust the one we're asking questions to. There's a world of difference between these prayers. Put them up on the screen. I mean, and there's a lot more. Why would you do this to me? Good prayer or bad prayer? Versus, what are you teaching me through this? Good prayer. Why won't you stop this storm? I mean, you could pray that, but maybe a better prayer would be, how do you want me to trust you in this storm? One prayer assumes God has failed. The other prayer assumes God is at work. Peter said, if it's you, command me to come out on the water. He asked for permission. He asks God for what he needs. And Jesus says, come on out. And his eyes are fixed on Jesus. But immediately when Peter takes his eyes off Jesus, what happens, church? You know the story, don't you? Verse 30. But when he saw the wind, he forgot to look at Jesus. When he saw the wind, when he saw the storm, he was afraid and began to sink, and he cried out, Lord, Lord, save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took a hold of him, saying, oh, you of little faith, why do you doubt? And when he got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. He takes his eyes off the Savior, and he looks at the sea. He takes his eyes off the winter, and he looks at the wind. He begins to look at the situation around him. He feels the danger and he begins to sink. Let me take you back to James. James 6, the next verse says, let him ask in what, church? Faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like, oh, here you go, isn't that interesting? A wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not suppose he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Listen, church, this is really important. The storm did not sink Peter. The storm did not sink Peter. The storm was already there. Peter began sinking when he stopped looking at Jesus as his anchor point. Storms won't sink you. You can do that all on your own. Storms can make you, and Jesus can do that through you. Number 3, last one. Stability, not release, is the end game. We're meant to ask in faith. Peter had already established a relationship with Jesus where he's looking at Jesus walking on the water and he's going, yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And because he can do that for himself, I think he can do it with me too. So he steps overboard and he takes a roller coaster ride with no doubting. I've got to give you the Greek word, dakrino, which again is interesting because in the Greek it literally means trying to go in 2 directions at one time. Have you ever tried to go in 2 directions at one time? Very difficult to do because you're only one individual. Doubting is the idea that I'm going to go this way, no, 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 I'm going to go this way. That is instability. Diakrino, the issue in James is not intellectual uncertainty. The issue is divided loyalty. That, yeah, you should take a picture of that. The issue in James is not intellectual uncertainty. It's not, maybe this will hold me and maybe this will hold me. The issue is divided loyalty. We are to trust in Jesus Christ with our whole heart, lean not unto our own understanding, in all our ways acknowledge him, and he will direct our paths. You may have some seriously honest questions, and that's fine. David asked, how long, O Lord? Habakkuk asked, what in the world, God, are you doing with these barbarians that are going to come over the gate? Thomas struggled to believe in the resurrection. I won't believe it until I put my finger in it, right? John the Baptist, Jesus' best buddy. Jesus said there's no one on earth like John the Baptist. And when John the Baptist was arrested and thought he was going to die eventually, he sent his disciples to go ask Jesus one thing. What was that thing? Are you really the Christ? Oh, asking questions is not the issue. The issue is divided loyalties. Who are we loyal to? These people asked questions, but their faith drew them in the right direction. Driven by the wind and tossed. Listen, can I tell you, you live in a world in 2026 where people are driven by the wind and tossed. There are divided loyalties. So what is important to somebody 5 years ago, they couldn't care less about now. What's important now won't be important 5 years from now. People will die on the hills culture tells them to die on, sometimes literally. That is divided loyalty. That is not having a stable place to stand. That is, give me my anchor point. I'll hook to it until another one comes along, or I'll hook to 1,000,000 of them. You ever wonder why LGB is how it started? What's it now? LGBTQIQ plus 7? 6, 7, I don't know. You ever wonder? You ever wonder why? It is because there are divided loyalties when you are not anchored to Jesus Christ. You'll never find stable ground. It will never be solid for you. And 10 years from now, you'll be, if you're not anchored to Jesus, you'll be fighting a fight that you never even dreamed you'd be fighting today. Because it's just not important today, but it will be then. Jesus gives us his word. And do you know what's important to me? The same thing that was important to him 2,000 years ago. Because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Culture takes its cues from the biggest influencers. Society is on a collision course with destiny because Jesus never changes. Their loyalties do, but ours as followers of Jesus do not. A changing culture will expose weak foundations. The storms of life will reveal your anchor points. few weeks ago, I had the privilege of going on a float trip with a friend of mine. That is, you get into a boat, you go down a river, and you do fishing as you go down the river. I love going on boat trips. You have to be real careful. It's fly fishing. It's kind of an exact science, but it's really easy until you get into the fast water. When you get into the fast water, and especially if the water's higher and it has more pressure underneath building, it will take your boat and you won't even know it's taking your boat. And sometimes you'll get into the eddies and you can't get back. You row, and it just takes you in circles. You need somebody experienced to know how to get down the river, especially when the river's fast. And I went a few weeks ago with a friend of mine, and the river was high and the water was fast. They had let more water out of the dam, and so the water was really churning. And we stopped at a place where he wanted to fish and I wanted to fish, and so we stayed in the boat and we were fishing, and before we knew it, we didn't even know what was happening. There was a cliff right in front of us where the water would smash against the cliff and then go to the right, and our boat had begun. We put the anchor down. We were fishing. We weren't paying attention. We were watching the indicators, and we were watching the water and trying to figure out where the fish were, and before we knew it, we were really close to that wall. The water had taken us, and we hadn't even noticed. And so my friend Casey, he said, get your rod in. So I got my rod in, and he started rowing, and it took a lot of work to row against that current, but he got us back to where we were before, put the anchor down in a better place than we had it before. And every 10 minutes, we would reevaluate to see if the environment had changed around us, to see if we had floated and not really noticed that we had floated further down. That's the world in which you live. That is the world in which I live. They're in this flow of life, and wherever the river takes them is where they are. And they never evaluate to see if they're in a safe place or a not safe place. But church, this is why it's really important for us to be with God's people, to go to church, to read our Bible, because storms are great evaluating tools. When you go through a storm, you can say, I have drifted too far, I need to come back. When you go through a storm, you can say, I'm getting too close to the rocks. Jesus had an anchor point for them, and they still had a lot of faith. And Peter, I want to just say to you, Peter got out of the boat. What were the other guys doing? They're still in the boat. We look at Peter and go, Peter, come on, man. Keep your eyes on Jesus. You got the rest of the guys cowering in fear in the boat. Let's be hard on them. Why? Because their faith had not grown like Peter's had grown. Peter said, this is an opportunity. I can find joy in the storm. James chapter 1. The other guys didn't even think about getting out of the boat. So God's goal is not to get rid of the storms, church, but to build stable believers who can find joy in the storms for his glory. Here's your so what. You ready? Number one, you cannot avoid storms. Whew, brilliant. Cannot avoid storms. Jesus said, in the world you'll have storms, but I've overcome the world. So what do you need to do? Evaluate. Remember, storms reveal your anchor point. Number two, trust and choose trust over fear. And number three, pursue stability rather than simply escape. Our goal is not to get out, but to be stable in it. All right? Those are 3 points. Those are great. A storm will reveal where your anchor point. When we went, we did Hurricane Helene relief last year with the youth. It was such a great time. There's this one house that we were working at, and once Helene, that hurricane had come through, it devastated several towns in North Carolina. We got to go to one of those towns and help this family get their house back in order. And they told us about these stories of what happened during the storm. And one story was a friend of theirs who was a paraplegic. He was in a wheelchair, and the storm came through. And I want you to know, as they're telling the story, they're just telling it so matter-of-factly, and all the kids are sitting there with their mouths on the ground, their chins on the ground. So the storm comes through. His wheelchair is gone. He's floating, bobbing through the water. He grabs a hold of the top of a telephone pole, and he hangs on there for 13 hours until help comes. And help finally arrived, and they took him off the telephone pole, and he made it through the storm. But not everybody did. I want to tell you, that torrent of water that he survived looked like this when we were there. That's the way it's supposed to look. And what happened was that water rose so fast, and it was such a threat. It took away lives and swept away lives. Storms can come when you least expect it, and from the most little things in our lives. The question is not whether you'll have storms. You will. The Apostle Paul tells us when the storms hit, those water rise, and you start floating through life, tossed by the waves. Some even suffer shipwreck in their faith. 1 Timothy 1:18 says this, wage the good warfare, hold faith and a good conscience. By rejecting this, some have made shipwreck of their faith. A life anchored to Jesus Christ, when battered by the storm, will never be destroyed by it. Jesus is the only anchor that's strong enough to hold us through suffering, confusion, and trials. So the question is not will you encounter storms? You will. The question is, when the storms come, will you have an anchor that holds? Number 2, remember, storms have a purpose. Again, brilliant, I know. Storms have a purpose. Jesus waited until the 4th watch. He watched them struggle. 6, 7 hours in the dark. He watched them. The disciples had to struggle in order to know that they could trust in Jesus. Why? Because later there would come a time when Jesus would leave, when he would ascend to heaven, and they would be alone, and they had to stand on their own in their faith. This was an opportunity for them to learn. They had to learn this, and we have to learn this ourselves. Don't falter in your faith so that you trust in other things for hope in this life. Don't falter in your faith so that you trust in other things for hope in this life. Most people don't wreck their lives because they wake up one morning and decide to do it. They drift through life confused about what they should and should not be doing. They don't have a secure anchor point, and when the storms come, and they will, emotions rise, confusion enters, fear grows, and clarity disappears. And without a stable anchor point, one bad decision leads to another. That anchor, why did I give you the Halifax explosion? Because that anchor weighed over half a ton. Actually, almost half a ton. And it flew over 2 miles in the air. I want you to know storms have the potential of devastating things. And I also find it ironic. An anchor is what's supposed to hold you steady in life. And because that anchor was blown apart by the storm, that very thing that was supposed to stabilize the ship flew 2.5 miles in the air into the middle of a park. If you're anchored to the wrong thing, you'll be surprised at the devastation that can happen. And you probably already know this. The very thing you think you might be looking to as your anchor point may not withstand your next storm. So when visibility is low and pressure is high, what we are anchored to matters most. God loves you to leave you too much in any storm. He knows you're in it, and he will redeem it, and it is for your benefit. It's the pressure that's going to make a better picture of him on the other side. You'll become a better piece of silly putty. Church, you'll look like great silly putty in his hands. Others will be able to see a clear picture of Jesus, and you will be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. I leave you with this verse, 2 Corinthians 4:7. We have this in treasures of jars of clay to show that the surpassing power to go through storms like this belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but church, we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are never driven to despair. We are persecuted, we are not forsaken, struck down, but we are not destroyed. Always carrying in the body of the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be also manifested in the way we go through storms.